Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pond weekly webinar series. We will be joining and trickling in. So you can see we have an awesome group assembled here. So we want to make the most of this 60 minutes. From the questions we were already getting before the session from attendees, we know people have lots of questions on this stuff. There's a lot of mystery that doesn't need to be there. So we're excited to crypto, stock donations, all kinds of non-cash contributions to nonprofits. And so we're really excited to get started. I'll kick off by just introducing myself. I'm Mitch Stein. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Pond. We present this webinar series every week. Anyone that is on Pond gets $50 for joining. So just absolutely make sure you fill out that review at the end. It'll be the easiest $50 you can make for your organization. And just as a reminder, Pond is the marketplace for nonprofits and all the vendors, tools, and services that are driving your mission. So you come to Pond, it works a lot like Angie's List or like Thumbtack, but instead of a handyman, it's your CRM, your consultant, your crypto donation platform, your stock donation platform. You can seek that all out there, and we have tons of great partners like the folks on the call today to connect you with and make the right match. So check out Pond. Thank you, April, for introducing yourself in the chat. That's a good reminder that this is totally interactive. You have experts here that are absolute leaders and innovators in the industry, so don't miss your chance to ask your questions. And without further ado, I will hand it over to our panelists to introduce yourself and the organization you represent, and just a few layers of your own identity that you want to share with us today. And Andrea, I'll have you go first.
Mitch, thanks for putting this together. I'm Andrea Young. I'm one of the co-founders of Donate Stock and our executive chair. A little bit about what we do is we try to democratize stock gifting, make it fast, easy, and free for both donors and not-for-profits. We have a donor-facing platform. We launched, middle of last year. I'm super excited about the work we're doing. A lot of great successes and learnings that we can share on today. About me before this, I like to refer to myself as a retired corporate CEO. I got out, I saw the light, and spent 15 years in the entertainment, hospitality, sports business. I'm based in Houston, and turned entrepreneur about 3 years ago. So I'm super excited to be here. A little fact that, I also have 2 kids, 15 and 12, so plenty to keep my hands, plenty to keep me busy.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. Joel, you want to next?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Joel Rivera. Mitch, thank you for having us. It really means a lot. I'm a frontline fundraiser for the University of Florida College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Absolutely love my role. Have a great opportunity to meet with alumni all over. A little bit before that, when I was a student, I was the executive director of Dance Marathon at UF. It's a student-run organization, and I have to give them a shout out. This past weekend, they raised $2.3 million for the kids at UF Health Children's Hospital. All kids, all students, it's incredible. And so that is my 9 to 5. After my 5 to 9, I'm heavily involved and deep into this tunnel and rabbit hole of Web3. Has spent a lot of time meeting with creators, founders. And so what I'm currently working on is building sort of a new generational nonprofit that's built and based off of blockchain, artificial intelligence, and extended reality. So I'm really excited to be here. And I know they're not on, but I have to. Mami and papi, te quiero. Have to give them a shout out.
Love that. Thank you, Joel. Alex, you know next?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. And Mitch, thanks for having us. I'm Alex. I'm one of the 2 co-founders of The Giving Block. We started the company in 2018 with the goal of making crypto donations as easy as possible for both nonprofits and the donors. It's really taken off since then. We've raised over $100 million in crypto donations now, working with roughly 1,500 nonprofits. It's been really amazing to see that impact, especially so quickly. In terms of my background, grew up in Baltimore, lived in Washington, D.C. most of my life. And then last year, like everyone else working in crypto and Web3, decided to move to Miami. So loving the warmer weather down here in Miami. So if you're ever in the area, reach out, say hi, and we can grab a coffee.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. And last but not least, Vance.
Thank you so much, Mitch. It's good to be here on with everybody. My name is Vance. I'm the founder and CEO of Overflow, and we are an online donation platform similar to Andrea, focused first on stock, and recently have partnered with the Giving Block for crypto as well to provide a unified experience to some of our customers. We launched July 2020, so a little bit newer than the Giving Block. We serve about 200 customers, nonprofits, faith-based organizations like churches. That's actually my background. So a little bit about me. I'm also a pastor at a church we founded in 2012 in Palo Alto, right in the heart of the Silicon Valley. I also have a wife and 4 kids under 6, so prayers are welcome.
Oh my God. We were just interviewing someone, and our head of engineering, his 3 kids below 7 were literally in like a pillow fight on the bed behind him.
Yeah, of course. So you might see mine barging in. I don't know. We'll see.
Yes, we love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, as everyone. Thanks for jumping in and introducing yourself in the chat too. So please keep doing that. Keep asking questions. We will try to get to everybody. As you can see, these are truly the leaders and innovators around this space. So do not miss your chance to learn from them. I'm excited to learn from them. I do not know a lot about the things we're talking about today, so I am very much a learner too. One thing I'd love to start off with, just to set the stage when we're talking about non-cash donations. Vance, what is the spectrum of non-cash giving? Like, why does that matter to nonprofits? Why are we having this conversation today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you are a development director at a nonprofit or a faith-based organization, you might know that there's about $450 billion donated every single year to 501c3 organizations. And a growing portion of that is non-cash. It's actually the fastest growing portion. And so if you go a little bit more granular into that, that includes things like stocks, securities, right? That encompasses a lot of different things too: mutual funds, IRAs, 401ks, QCD distributions, all of that, as well as one of the newest and most exciting segments, which Joel said earlier, Web3, so crypto, NFTs. And then even before all of that, people historically have always been open to giving things like vehicles, wine collectibles. And if you actually look at the IRS report on this, billions and billions of dollars are actually given without any technology, just with the initiative of the donor, because they love your organization so much. They will do all the manual paperwork. And a lot of the people on this call are trying to solve that, to streamline that and make that a little bit more frictionless.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Andrea, I know that you've been around this for a while. Like, the past 10 years, how has this conversation changed? Like, what's different today than if we were talking about non-cash giving in 2012?
I mean, I think a few things have changed. I mean, one, the experience 10 years ago when it comes to stock gifting has not changed materially. And so that's when we first set out and realized, like, hey, this is a problem. Why isn't anyone doing it? Went back during COVID and said, hey, has somebody fixed this yet? And really learned that it hasn't. To Vance's point, there's a ton of friction. So I think, there's a ripe opportunity. There's, a lot of investment in fintech to solve this problem, and opportunities to do so now. Furthermore, I think, we now have a whole new generation of traders, or, retail traders, or new investors, millennials, who have entered the market, right? So we have, our older generation who is already maybe focused on giving, away some of their wealth back. But now we have a very philanthropic younger group of people who have joined the ecosystem, the workforce, that, want to support not-for-profits. And this is an easy and efficient way for them to do that.
I want to dig in on that a lot further later, about how this is no longer just a major gift conversation or like an elderly conversation, which I think a lot of people assume. So that is a great point. I'm so glad you raised that. Before we get there, even Vance brought up a couple acronym things. I think some vocab. I know Bonnie mentioned she finds this topic intimidating. Alex, could you kick us off, and then maybe Joel jump in, like, especially around crypto? Like, I know we said Web3, like, what does that mean? Assume I know nothing about crypto. Could you explain a little bit about the keywords in vocab 101?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I would say that the 3 words or 4 words really that you'll probably hear the most are blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto, Web3, and actually probably more and more the metaverse, right?
NFTs.
Yeah, so it's kind of a lot of buzzwords now, but the easiest way to explain it, I think, is Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency, and it's still the largest cryptocurrency out there, and it uses blockchain. So think of blockchain as the underlying technology behind Bitcoin and behind many other cryptocurrencies, but not necessarily all of them, but most of the major ones. And then when we think of Web3 and sort of the metaverse, it's kind of a deeper layer of crypto and more surrounding it. Web3 is more when you get into things like smart contracts and NFTs and these things that go beyond just what I would consider more like simple transactions. And then I guess the metaverse is even a layer further, right? It's like the entire experience around this. It's essentially like your digital existence almost, right? You hear about companies like Facebook even get a rebranding to Meta because they're so focused on this idea of everyone's lives becoming so digital, where they're basically making a bet that people are going to start caring more and more about their digital lives and less about their physical lives. That's kind of the high level way of how I put it. But Joel, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I like to think of, I had a hard time trying to figure out different ways to explain it because I'm like, oh, months and months, and like I can go this direction or this direction. But when you put into perspective of a fundraiser and a nonprofit, it's a new opportunity for building a new form of community. It's tapping into the next generation. It's realizing that we are in an incredible time where technology is about to advance fast. And so when you think of your kids who play Roblox, who play Fortnite, who own digital items already, such as skins on Fortnite, the process has already begun. So this whole world of Web3 is so fascinating to me because it provides new opportunities. It provides you to get creative, to create new storytelling campaigns. So when you think of it as if your organization is in a capital campaign, we are still like way before in the silent phase where you're trying to figure it all out. So conversation like these that we're having today is really important. And I really encourage, if you don't know, feel free to reach out because this is the beginning of paving the road for that next generation and what that next generation of nonprofits looks like. So not really definitions, but a large scope of where we're headed, in my opinion.
Yeah, and why it matters. I think it's intimidating in a lot of fronts, and I think also, especially if you're intimidated by the topic, it's hard to go talk to a donor about it. So, Vance, how have you seen, like, when you coach your organizations that are users of Overflow, like, how do they seek out these types of donations? Like, how do you find out who has stock to donate or crypto to donate and who's ready to give it?
Yeah, you nailed it, Mitch. I think if the mindset by fundraisers is to just simply put a button on your website, that's not going to yield a lot of immediate fruit, right? Because what we coach our customers, nonprofits, and churches on is really the rollout process, is the mission critical process to this. As much as us as fundraisers are intimidated by things like crypto, just imagine your donors. So a couple things that we try to drive home is really an opportunity to be more generous than you otherwise could have. Because when you think about it, when we're focused on soliciting for people's cash in their checking and savings account, that's going to be very limited, right? But if they are even just an entry-level employee at a tech company, they probably have much more significant wealth in stocks and RSUs and things of that nature. So we try to educate them on the communication being around the donor's opportunity to be even more generous, which it's cool when you provide them that opportunity, they actually want to. They just didn't know that it was possible. And then the secondary thing outside of that is really the tax savings opportunity, right? So when you give specifically from your appreciated gains, this is the same across stock and crypto and appreciated assets overall, you actually protect capital gains tax. And then when your organization, the 501c3 organization, liquidates it, then the capital gains tax is completely protected. You get to take the full market value and use that for your mission. and the donor gets to take the full market value as a charitable tax deduction. It's the biggest win-win situation in philanthropy.
I love that. And
if I could jump in real quick, Mitch, these are conversations that, I get to experience every day, is sort of building those relationship with your donors, especially in higher education. It's really important because they're great opportunities to talk about essentially what has been happening with your university, what you're striving for, and then providing these opportunities where it's not just cash that we're looking for. It's, we can tap into charitable lead trust, life income gifts, real estate, life insurance, bequests. There's so many different ways to go about it. And it really opens the eyes to these donors, because when you build that relationship, you come from a meaningful place. You come from a place where you want to help bridge and help them achieve what they want to do. It's already incredible. Adding the tax benefits on top of that, it really is really beneficial for their perspective, I feel like.
Yeah, I think being prepared with that menu, you've got the toolkit, right? You've got a way to connect with just about anybody, and it's all about being informed what those options are. One thing that I hear sometimes or sense from people is they're worried about asking for something else. If someone already gave cash, am I going to cannibalize their future gift by asking them for something on the non-cash front? Andrea, how do you coach people around that concern?
So what's interesting, if you look at the data, is actually that non-cash gifts, like stock, for example, tend to actually be larger. And so when we kind of look at this issue, we don't look at this as kind of, hey, we're going to take from the existing pie. This is going to help us all grow the pie of giving in this country. So specifically, we might coach someone to make sure that, thinking about, this is not necessarily money you're planning on touching. People might actually hold a lot more money, or typically do, in stocks or alternative assets, and they're not thinking about them as possibly, being liquid. And it's just really getting the donors to think differently about it. And also, maybe even that first ask is not cash plus, but hey, let me get you a bigger donation to start by, tapping into some of your appreciated stock.
Yeah, I also think it just builds a new relationship when you're able to have a conversation. Like, that's important to someone when they have stock holdings or they hold crypto. It's something they care about. And so the more that that's just another touch point to be able to discuss with the donor and build that relationship, like Joel just mentioned.
Mitch,
I would say one thing, what we've also noticed is outside of multi-generational wealth, families, people who have been doing stock gifting for a long time and understand it, a lot of their donors don't even understand that this is available to them. So when we're starting with a not-for-profit, we'll say to them, hey, why don't you start with your board members or your current givers and just let them know. So right now we're working with World Central Kitchen. Everyone's seen all the great work they're doing in the Ukraine, and they just go through their existing database, our existing, we're seeing, multiple donations every single day for them. And really it's just awareness, and they're the first gatekeepers to educating their existing, and then we're helping supplement by partnering with Giving Tuesday or holding webinars or doing things like we're doing today, right, to educate.
Totally. Yeah. Just to add on that, as Andrea said, we are seeing that the average non-cash gift is typically higher, right? Actually pretty significantly higher. Mm-hmm. So if a person is going to choose between cash and non-cash, it's actually more advantageous that they give non-cash because it's going to be a much larger gift. So it's typically net new is what we're seeing. They actually even did a study, Texas Tech, several years back, Dr. Russell James, where they analyzed IRS data of all the nonprofits that report. They actually analyzed organizations that take non-cash assets grew 55% faster year over year in their donation growth versus ones that didn't. And so the analogy I like to use is that your organization doesn't want to be on a one-lane highway, right? You want the whole interstate. You want a lot of options, and that's how you optimize the opportunity.
Well, that we will definitely have to link to that study in the we'll do a recap blog post and definitely link to some great resources. That brings up a great point of like, okay, why wouldn't I want to be growing faster than my peers? Why? But Alex, are there organizations that aren't ready to accept crypto or maybe accept stock, or how do you know when you're ready?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We actually are pretty thorough in like reviewing a nonprofit before we'll even onboard them. We say no to more nonprofits than we say yes to, which is kind of a weird situation to be in, because it's certainly not for everyone yet. It's still early days for crypto, and I don't necessarily think everyone needs to be taking crypto yet. So one thing, we have tons of nonprofits approaching us, and one of the easiest things is, we have nonprofits approaching us all the time that say, hey, I just started a nonprofit yesterday and I want to do crypto. And it's, our response is usually like, they need to get the basics in place first, right? They need to start fundraising kind of with traditional methods first. They need to be able to accept credit card donations, probably stock donations, even before crypto in a lot of cases. It's, sometimes a matter of size too, right? Like they need to get their social media presence up. They need to do better digital marketing. They need to have a decent website, right, before they can even think about crypto and engaging with this community. Because if those rest of those areas are kind of still lacking or still being developed, you probably aren't going to see the same results than you would if you wait, let's say 6 months or a year to when everything is kind of, renewed and refreshed and ready to go. Then add crypto when you're ready to have that individual giving program built out.
Mitch, can I add something real quick to that?
Of course, yeah.
I think it's so fascinating to take a step back and understand what Alex just mentioned of someone coming in and wanting to start a new nonprofit, accepting crypto. That's where we are at. I went to a conference, our NFT Basel Miami last year. And the one thing I realized was every single person involved in the Web3 space wants to make a difference. They're passionate about something. They just don't know how to efficiently do so. So to me, it is almost a responsibility of nonprofits to start understanding and bridging that gap. Because if that person who is passionate about wanting to start something is able to directly link with a nonprofit who understands NFTs, who understands where we're going, they'll be able to mend that relationship and help create that difference. So to me, I was speaking to students the other day who are coming out with an NFT collection. And I know I'm throwing buzzwords out, so I apologize if it's confusing. An NFT collection where the proceeds wanted to go to a nonprofit that they're passionate about, but the nonprofit still doesn't understand and is not ready yet. So I feel like as a community, we need to be mindful and open-minded about what's happening in the space with this younger generation, because they're hungry to create change. And we have the perfect opportunity to pioneer that road together.
Yeah, I would say I would add a caveat to my earlier statement that the exception where what I said earlier isn't the case is often when it is a Web3 or crypto focused nonprofit, when the mission is often, a bit more tech related than a more general mission. In those cases, we actually have seen success with smaller and newer nonprofits tapping into this new donor demographic. And that's what we always tell people. Like at the end of the day, Joel, what you're getting at is this is a new donor demographic and not just a donation method. And we've seen lots of nonprofits make the mistake of viewing this just as a donation method and then kind of just sitting back, waiting for the money to come in, but not thinking about how do they actually fundraise crypto, right? You're not going to get a ton of crypto donations if you just add this and never even think about crypto again. You really have to be a bit more comprehensive about it.
Yeah, what I'm getting from all of you is that there's a walking before you run thing on a lot of levels. Like you want to have your broader messaging, digital presence there before you're trying to add on crypto. I think that makes a ton of sense, and making sure that you're informed and educated to answer questions you're going to get from donors about it. One of the things that came up in the chat from Rick that I wanted to touch on, which I think relates to both stock and crypto and other assets, is there's some risk there of what if that stock holding is a company that doesn't align with your values as an organization, or are there risks around crypto or even like certain currencies or certain NFTs that could present risks with your values? I'm sure everyone has something to say about this, but maybe Andrea, do you want to kick off of how nonprofits can think about managing some of the risks related to non-cash donations?
Yeah, I have to. I mean, when it's specific to things like ESG, if I'm being completely honest, it's not something we hear a lot about. except from, a few select not-for-profits that really play in that space. And so, what I would tell them if I was speaking to one of them is you always have a choice of whether or not you want to, benefit from the sale of, stocks from maybe a company that participates in that space, right? So they can put limitations on themselves. We try not to be the, deciding factor or the decision maker on that, right? Because what seems okay to someone may not be okay to somebody else. We're just providing the opportunity. So I think, that's really kind of an individualized decision for, each nonprofit to make on their own based on their own missions.
Yeah, I love that reminder that you can do your own diligence and have your own process, but if you're not like in the game, you don't get the chance to do that. So
that's right. So if you're not there, like you don't even get a chance, like, right. If you don't, you gotta swing in order to, potentially hit a ball, right?
Yeah.
And Mitch, I'd love to jump in on this topic too, because it always comes up around crypto with ESG. And I saw Rick ask the question on this too. Funny enough, this is like a huge misconception that we deal with all the time. People are concerned around crypto either being, let's say, illicit, right? They say like, oh, I thought crypto was just used by criminals. Or they say crypto is really bad for the environment, like you're going to destroy the planet if you use crypto. Both are funny enough, actually huge misconceptions. On the illicit activity, your traditional donors are actually more likely to be involved in illicit activity than your crypto donors. It's almost a 10-to-1 difference because of how transparent crypto is. And I'll admit, in the early days of crypto, it was used for things like Silk Road pretty frequently. The assumption by criminals was the government didn't know how to look at this stuff or use it or trace it, but it's gotten pretty advanced when it comes to analytics. There's even quotes now from like the FBI and DEA saying, we wish everyone used crypto because it'd be so much easier to follow the money because it has this public audit trail of every transaction ever. So there's people who get caught for doing bad things for no other reason than because they use crypto thinking they were going to be anonymous. So it's pretty funny how it's actually almost the opposite. And for the environmental stuff, it's actually similar. There's a lot of really bad studies and research out there about, these headlines of Bitcoin's going to consume more energy than the whole world combined in 10 years or something like that. And it stems from a lack of misunderstanding of actually how the network works and scales. There's this false assumption that with every transaction, Bitcoin and crypto uses more energy. Actually, though, the energy consumption is actually securing the network. Adding more transactions doesn't mean more power consumption. So it doesn't scale in that way where people think it's going to keep using more and more energy. And funny enough, Bitcoin, for example, uses less energy than Christmas lights. So this is all relative, right? So it's much more energy efficient than traditional financial systems, than gold mining, all these other things that people compare it to. And roughly 60% of the energy used to mine crypto is actually green and renewable. So the energy mix is actually greener than almost any other industry in the world, which is another thing a lot of people don't talk about. And that's why we've even seen some environmental groups get behind this as a way to encourage more investment in green energy. So some really interesting stuff. Maybe we can send out as follow-ups on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's probably some good resources. And I think, Rick mentioned as well, something that can be explained in a gift acceptance policy. And I think if there's a concern of values alignment around crypto, being able to just cite some of those statistics to dispel some of those myths, even within a policy, would be really helpful. So we'll definitely share some of that afterwards. I'd love to get a little bit tactical because we did have several questions come up in from our registrants around the actual acceptance. And so I'd love to talk a bit about, starting off, like, how do you even know, do you hold on to the stock as the nonprofit? Do you convert it? Do you need a financial advisor to help you with those decisions? What can you do yourself? Vance, I'd love to get your take on that to start.
Yeah. A large portion of our customers are in the faith space, and that's where I come from. And so I can just speak from personal experience. What you want to do is work with your board to ensure that you have an investment policy that is transparent to your members, your congregation, your donors, your supporters. Right. I will say that most organizations have an investment policy to liquidate immediately. Not all. There are some organizations that have more nuanced policies that are transparent, where they are holding a portfolio, whether that be in ETFs or any different strategy. It's interesting though, because I think a couple of years ago, UNICEF went public to say that they're holding Bitcoin, right? So the spectrum is pretty large in terms of the strategies, and it's really dependent on your liquidity needs and what you're trying to affect change in the world. So if you're an organization that is local and feeding, the homeless, you want to deploy capital pretty quickly, especially in situations like the pandemic. If you're a church and you're raising money for a capital campaign to buy a building, you might not need liquidity immediately. So you can take a different investment approach.
If I can add to what Vance said, I mean, I think he's spot on. The other, you see a mix, most do liquidate. What we have found is that really what was a learning to us since we beta was how difficult it actually is for not-for-profits to set up a brokerage account. There actually are a lot of barriers because they liquidate. They're not a very attractive client. So one of the functions we have is the ability to liquidate on behalf of our clients and then send them the proceeds. So that removes a huge barrier of entry. So the 1.5 million not-for-profits, in the US today can go onto our site and can claim their page or you can donate to them today. So removing that barrier and that friction has really opened this up to 99% of not-for-profits who were not in this space, being able to play in this space before.
Yeah. It was funny because when I initially did this for my own organization back in the day, it literally took me 3 weeks to open up a Fidelity account. And I love Fidelity, but it just took forever. And it was all this manual paperwork. And so that liquidation feature that Andrea and their firm offers, we offer it too, is just something that I think, like Andrea said, it's going to democratize this to everybody, which is exciting.
Yeah. And, you've brought up some of the tech, obviously, that some of you represent. I do think it would be helpful. We've talked about the spectrum of types of non-cash donations. Could we talk a bit about the spectrum of tools that I, as a nonprofit, should be using to manage those things? And Alex, maybe you can kick off and we can go around.
Yeah. And you mean in terms of actually accepting a gift or everything?
Just what does the tech stack need to look like around non-cash donations? Like, what are the things I should be considering as a nonprofit leader?
I mean, I would say the biggest thing is, essentially keep it simple. All the time we see a lot of nonprofits try and reinvent the wheel. Well, they'll try to build everything from scratch. And with non-cash, when you approach it when selecting a vendor, it's similar to selecting a vendor for other fundraising methods in the sense that, when you get ready to accept credit card donations, you don't decide to reinvent Stripe, right? Or PayPal. Use existing vendors and methods of being able to accept these donations. We've seen a lot of nonprofits try to basically create their own way of accepting crypto. And then they're surprised by how difficult it is or how long it takes and things like that. And they end up wasting a lot of time and money. It's usually a lot faster, a lot cheaper and easier to use an existing vendor, whether it's us, Overflow, Donate Stock, or other ones out there for non-cash gifts. So I would say don't overcomplicate it is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, that's great, Alex. I think when organizations, like Alex said, many organizations try to explore, okay, how can we just build this tech stack ourselves within our organization? And some that have the resources can, right? Some actually build on Stripe directly themselves and things like that. What I've seen though that's lacking in that approach is the back end office compliance that's necessary. So one example of that is the charitable acknowledgement letter. And that's something that we try to educate our customers on and help automate for them, because there are actually very specific things that need to be done so that your donors don't have any trouble by the IRS later when taking that charitable tax deduction. So all of that back-end piping and infrastructure is actually really important to consider as you think about receiving non-cash assets.
Awesome. And Andrea, I'd love to hear from you. That we see this constantly at Pond, but even the simplest things, they seem to be like, okay, well, we have to go get approval. Let me talk to my board. Let me talk to, my boss, or I need to get a donor on board with this or something. How do you coach folks when it even comes to using your platform or others in kind of pitching that ROI, or maybe just sidestepping that conversation altogether if it's not something that the board needs to be opining on?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. I mean, first is, the way we're set up is, Mitch, you could go online and donate to the charity of your choice today on our platform. If they've not claimed their page already, and we have, we're closing in on 1,000 people that have claimed their page. But if they haven't, I would call your not-for-profit that you donated and say, hey, guess what? We have a donation here available to you, and we'd like you to claim your page. Obviously, everyone has to pay for their employees and such here, so we take a modest transaction fee. So the second part I would say to your question, my second answer would be to be part on our platform. There's no cost to you. The only cost is if there's actually a transaction that occurs and somebody actually does donate stock. So it's a very low risk value proposition and really upside. And the final thing I was going to say too, but it made me think of one more, is what we've also found is there are not-for-profits that are accustomed to receiving stock. World Central Kitchen's a great example of that. They came to us and said, we don't, this is really difficult for us to reconcile. We can't keep track of them. And that's something that we offer, our dashboard and reporting we do on their behalf. So even the folks that already know how to do this, they're not set up to scale it as much as they can. And that's where we come in. So you're either, hey, if you're a smaller organization, you're trying to convince your board, there's really no risk to be on our platform. And if you're a larger organization that already does it, the answer is this is how we scale and grow what we're already doing.
And Joel, when you're having these conversations internally where you've come across something interesting or you want to get your team on board, like what are your tactics to get attention to the things you're interested in or move people to take action on trying something new?
It all comes down to education. I've realized that I sort of live in a bubble where I've just really focused on sort of this Web3 and different tools that are up and coming. And so the educational part is everything. Whether it is what I'm currently working on is trying to form some focus groups to sort of have these conversations, to start from step one, to go, this is what this technology can do. This is what we're seeing right now in the market. This is what other schools are doing. These are what other nonprofits are doing. The nonprofit world, we always like to be safe. And that's just a reality because we are dealing with money that we receive from people who believe in our mission. So we always want to be extra sure that what we're doing is, okay and is proven. So it is a huge obstacle to sort of get that educational aspect because you also have to be willing to learn and understand where we're headed. So focus groups, sharing articles. I share a lot from the Giving Block. They put out a lot of great thought pieces in regards to what crypto is doing. And so being able to show is what's important to me and expanding on the mission of trying to get others to understand.
Yeah. Share this webinar. It's an easy way.
I'm going to tell all my friends after this.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing that we touched on earlier that I would love to circle back on is this concept of the non-cash donation no longer is a major gifts conversation or no longer is like an older donor conversation. I'd love to hear everyone's take on this because I think it's a huge part of why we're all doing this is it's truly democratizing philanthropy. It is helping younger generations connect more meaningfully with organizations. So I guess I don't even have a specific question. I would just love to hear everyone's thoughts on how you see that within your own perspective on this topic and within your own organizations. And maybe Alex, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. And I guess on our side, because of the way the demographics look with crypto, it tends to be mostly younger donors, right? And there's an interesting dynamic we're seeing, and this kind of gets back to one of the earlier questions of like net new donors, net new dollars. With crypto, when we talk to donors, they're often only donating in crypto. Like that's the only way they give because most of their wealth is stored in crypto. And nonprofits tend to be pretty surprised when we tell them there's over 300 million people out there using crypto and the crypto market cap is over 2 trillion. Like imagine not being able to tap into that huge new donor demographic. And oh, by the way, they're relatively young and wealthy too, with an average gift size of like $10,000. It's pretty remarkable, really. And there's one stat I want to read too from a CNBC article just a couple of weeks ago, but 83% of millennial millionaires own cryptocurrency, and more than half have at least 50% of their wealth in crypto, and nearly a third have at least 3/4 of their wealth in crypto. So this is where young people are putting their money, they're investing, they're storing their wealth here. And if you can't accept that and you're not on the menu, then you won't be able to get those donations.
Can I share a perspective from my side?
Yeah.
It's very, so when we're fundraising, it's okay. We want to talk to, the older demographic, to talk about IRAs, to talk about estate planning, bequest. And so this is similar, but for the younger generation. And it's a hard concept to grasp because we don't like to really think of, oh, it's possible through crypto and understanding crypto that there are a ton of crypto millionaires out there that are wanting to make a difference and wanting to give. So it's a perception that I feel the nonprofit community has to kind of grasp, and understanding, okay, this is one demographic way we've always done things, reaching out to the older generations, reaching out and having those really thoughtful, meaningful conversations of leaving a legacy impacting gift. But also there is a new strategy that has to go about with this new generation. And part of that is just listening and understanding from them.
Yeah. And Vance, how have you seen this democratization trend even within your own platform?
Yeah, I think the democratization comes from streamlining the process. So especially in the stock transaction world or the stock transfer world, to do a charitable gift transfer in the form of securities took literally downloading physical forms, filling it out, and faxing it in, right? And so if you think about that, let's say you're really good at finding a fax machine and you don't mind doing it, and it takes you, 15 minutes. That's not practical to give one share of Uber, right? And so for the very first time, it's now become practical to give just one share. So we call it give a share, right? And so it truly is democratized because it's never been as easy as, how we've streamlined it with technology.
Love that. Andrea, what would you add to the democratization conversation?
Yeah, I just think, for us, one of the biggest things moving forward is education, right? And really making people understand what we talked about earlier, which is the significant tax impact, particularly if you're in a state when you're sitting on appreciated gains, particularly if you're in a state like California, where Vance is, and your capital gains and your tax rates are even higher. They may be here in Texas. So there's a lot of education work to be done here. I think as we educate that market and we are where they are, you'll see this. And, I love the give a share analogy. And we see that, right? We see donations, $10,000 like Alex is suggesting, and we see, $500 or even $60 donations. So integrating into where they are, integrating with platforms that maybe are doing the recurring monthly gift program, are all things that, certainly are part of, our strategic roadmap into making this more accessible by being, the easy button where everyone is.
Yeah, and I think what you brought up around education, I feel like that's such a great idea for Blue, who dropped this in the chat asking thoughts on approaching this demographic. I think if you're able to give content is king, as people love to say in marketing, if you're able to really engage with that audience by virtue of informing them and educating them on opportunities to give in new ways and stuff that's more accessible, that's huge. That's such a big win. So thank you for bringing up the education. And it aligns with what Joel mentioned around educating your team internally. You can do something similar with the donor population as well. One of the questions that came up from our pre-question list that we got from attendees was about how giving compares in their ongoing engagement with the organization. So if I'm a stock or a crypto donor, am I more likely to repeat? Am I more likely to then give cash? I'm not sure if Vance or Alex have stat. Obviously, we know they're larger donors, but beyond that, do we have insights on how they behave as a supporter of the organization?
Yeah, the behavior is very different, right? The behavior is not so much as doing it monthly, maybe like cash giving. That is still something a lot more common for cash, even though we do have several donors on our platform that give stock monthly, because they take more of a portfolio approach to their giving, which is super cool. And I do think that's going to be part of the future of giving. But non-cash assets, from what we've seen at Overflow overall, is bigger one-time gifts, maybe 1, 2, 3 times in a year. I think what's important is that you tie these communications to a catalytic campaign. If you're tying the communications to a catalytic campaign and then educating them in that moment, then it maximizes the opportunity. And so whether that is for the church space, Easter season right now, or for the wider nonprofit space, which is typically October, November, December, those are the times you really need to be planned about your communication so that you maximize it.
Yeah, and on the crypto side, I would say, I mean, the behavior is, similar to other younger donors. They're just incredibly digital, right? Like if you're sending direct mail with asking people to donate crypto, you're probably not going to get a lot of donations. So you really have to take a digital first approach when you're trying to engage with crypto donors specifically. And funny enough, when we help nonprofits become good crypto fundraisers, we're really helping them become good at fundraising from younger donors in general. Because often they're new to, let's say, Twitter. They didn't even have a Twitter profile before. They were doing everything on Facebook. And now it's opened up this new channel for them in general of fundraising on Twitter and engaging with new followers there. So it's been really interesting to see this, because it's almost the opposite of the typical donors that nonprofits are used to, that are mailing them a check, let's say monthly or annually. So it's been a lot of fun to work on that.
Mitch, if I may add something, one of the things about giving for any of us operating in this space, including, folks on the call today, is, it should be a pleasant experience for people, whether that's cash, crypto, stock, it doesn't matter what it is. And so historically, I don't know that I feel like we've, the industry's been hitting, that one out of the park. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. So we really focus on making sure that user experience is great. And that's going to make them want to come back, and that they feel appreciated and the follow-up is there. And so, very nuanced thing, but, historically, if a not-for-profit accepted a stock donation, it would just say, maybe have a bunch of random numbers into their brokerage account, but they would never know it came from you, Mitch, right? And so not only do they not know or how to reconcile or who it came from, then you never even maybe hear from them a thank you. And then you feel underappreciated. So again, trying to make that user experience is, for all of us, is super important in what we do to make it, a pleasant experience. People are doing good, right? We're connecting, doing good. You should feel good about doing it at the same time.
And just going off that, to double it down, that donor cultivation cycle, it's really important. That's one thing that won't change. New technologies coming in will change, but we're human. We are individuals that are passionate. We care. And so that donor cultivation cycle is still very similar. Focusing on stewardship is more important now than ever. And we have the technology and we have new ways of doing that, especially when you give through crypto or stocks, and especially working with younger donors, is that stewardship looks differently than what we're used to. It's, it includes a phone call and a text, thank you, but there are more unique ways coming up that we will be able to do, including NFTs. Sorry, I had to drop the NFTs again.
No, I'm so glad you both touched on that, because I think it comes with the territory of democratization. That means you're opening the door wider, which means you have to have a different communication and stewardship approach than traditional major gifts, because you're not taking each of those people out to a dinner once a quarter, and yet you still can make them feel really special. And you want to make sure that you're communicating with them in the same pattern. So I think all those are fantastic points. One of the questions that came up, which I know we've talked a lot about stock and crypto, and maybe Andre or Vance just know how to do this. Someone asked how you donate a car to a nonprofit. What are some of the, if you have like an out of the box donation, is there a tool out there that helps with that, or what's the best way to go about it?
There's not really a tool. As part of our platform and our subscription, we do provide what we call concierge level support, where we do see a lot of one-off kind of non-cash assets that are being wanted to be given by the donors that we actually help facilitate, just from kind of a human coordination standpoint. And so we've actually facilitated a couple cars in the past month that has yielded over $100,000 of value, which is really, really cool. A lot of people in the pandemic realized they didn't need 4 cars. So they're starting to give some of them for a good cause, which is really, really cool. I think the most important thing with a lot of one-off non-cash assets is how that asset is appraised is going to be important for how you claim the appropriate level of a charitable tax deduction. In regards to everything else in terms of transfer, what I've seen is that the nonprofit doesn't want to be the one that is responsible for liquidating it, right? And so we help in that fashion as well, because most of the time they don't want to actually receive the car. They just want the cash value of it. So there's a couple components that, technology hasn't fully streamlined yet. But right now, just as a service, we provide some concierge support on that. But I do think giving those options and making it clear on your website that you're open to that will actually unlock, several one-off gifts here and there throughout the year, which is exciting.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. I've heard of boat donations. I'm sure it really runs the gambit. So that's awesome. All right, I cannot believe 51 minutes have already gone by. We are nearing the end of the session, and it's completely flown by. I want to make sure, first of all, do a last call for Q&A in the comments. Thank you, everyone, for jumping in and sharing. I know there's one question from Barbara about the tool for the tax letter. So Andrea, Alex, and Vance all represent tech platforms. We will link to all of their sites and stuff in the wrap up that we do and send around. So we will definitely get you all the info to learn more about how those tools work. But lastly, I would love to just spend the last 8.5 minutes here going around the horn. And I just would love to hear from each person, if we were having this conversation 5 years from now, what do you hope that conversation is like? Where do you see things going? And I guess less of a prediction and more of a hope for where we are in 5 years. And Joel, would you want to kick us off?
Oh yeah, I love these questions. First, thanks, Mitch, again. This has been a really incredible experience, and being able to talk about it, it really helps formulate more thoughts. But, to me, we're, again, in a very pivotal time where technology is advancing at a super fast pace. So being mindful of what technologies are in place. Right now, we can think of blockchain, artificial intelligence, and extended reality. And when you think of extended reality, we're talking virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. I'm sorry if you don't understand, if you don't understand what those definitions are, but it is a process of being able to create new donor experiences, being able to highlight your mission, being able to utilize storytelling in different ways. And so to me, that's where the nonprofit industry is going, is as time goes on, we'll have to implement an artificial intelligence sector in a nonprofit game. We'll have to implement virtual reality, augmented reality in the sector. And we're going to have to bring in blockchain specialists. So that's one thing that I've been working on, is sort of a trial, figuring out and really trying different things so that it can hopefully showcase and help nonprofits understand what's able. So I'm really dedicated into creating this new sort of generational nonprofit for the new generation incoming that, sits in front of the TV, plays games, creates, and is in that creative side. So to me, 5 years from now looks incredible. And it's going to be very, very interesting how we as a community move forward to create new experiences for our donors.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. And I think that's such a good point about how this is impacting the sector itself. Is like, I saw some stat, I don't know if it was 5 years or 10 years, so I'm kind of butchering the specifics, but it was like 50% of your nonprofit staff are going to be tech people in 5 to 10 years. Like, this is a tech industry. And it's super exciting, but it requires a lot of intentional training and educating and upskilling and getting the right people in those seats.
Yeah. And one more thing, I'm sorry, Mitch, branding is going to be what elevates nonprofits to that next level. Your brand and your mission and kids and this next generation being able to relate to your brand is going to be very meaningful, because we care about branding in a physical sense, but now we have to consider what branding looks like in a digital sense.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just laughing at one of the comments in the chat.
I apologize.
We got our happy hour last night complimenting me on hosting today. Andrea, do you want to go next? And what conversation would you and I be having 5 years from now?
I hope it's a celebratory conversation, Mitch, where we can look back and say, wow, we've unlocked, millions, if not, billions in new funding for not-for-profits as a result of all the different things people on this, call here are doing today, and that we've removed the friction and made things easier, both for the donor and for the not-for-profit.
Awesome. Thank you. Vance, how about you? Where is this conversation going?
Yeah, our mission is to inspire the world to give. Andrea said it earlier, there's been an explosion in fintech. And if you actually sum up the fintech space, most of it is in the area of personal finance. And I actually believe it's in the area of personal finance. There's like a new app every single month around budgeting, because what's happening right now is that money for most people is actually a master over them. They can't control it. And so every time my friend downloads a new personal finance app, they don't want to check it anymore, because that actually doesn't change their behavior, right? And so while we're passionate about inspiring the world to give, is I truly believe that's how people get financially free. Because when you actually flip the switch and you're not just budgeting for yourself, but your money is actually not just for yourself, but for others, you're playing offense instead of defense with your finances. And I think that's what is actually going to change the world in 5 years, is not only that we're going to be incredible allocators of resources, because I think that's important, but should be table stakes. But if everybody had clean water in the world today, if I just prayed to God and he made it happen like today, in 10 years, people would have dirty water again. Why? Because the problem is actually not just money. The problem is greed. But giving people don't greed, and greedy people don't give. And so in 5 years, I would love it that a lot more people are giving people.
Wow, I need that on a
Vance
t-shirt.
taking us to church. Vance taking us to church. Preach, Vance. I'm here for it.
Have you trademarked that? That's an amazing catchphrase. I love that.
I haven't. Maybe I should. But
Vance, by the way, my parents are pastors, so that means that, like, when you're talking, I'm like, oh man, yeah, we're
That's awesome.
My grandfather also was a Methodist minister. So
there you go.
Faith in the call here today. Yeah. All right, Alex, you've got 2.5 minutes here to bring us home.
All right, a bit less inspirational, a bit more tactical, but hopefully non-cash gifts are the norm on every nonprofit website, right? That is almost the default way of giving. And for crypto and stocks and other non-cash gifts, I hope it gets to the point where it's actually unusual that a nonprofit is not taking non-cash gifts, especially stock and crypto. I'm a bit biased, but I think it will be unusual for nonprofits not to be taking crypto in the next 5 years. There will be more nonprofits taking crypto than not taking crypto, would be my guess.
Well, I mean, seeing how it's grown, right? How much has the picture changed, even like in the last year for you at Giving Block, and seeing the number of organizations interested or taking crypto versus a year before that?
We're growing roughly 10x a year.
So it's absolutely not a crazy assumption to think that more nonprofits will be accepting crypto than not in 5 years.
Yeah,
that's proof. That's a proof we got to bring to our boards.
Yeah,
that picture.
That's awesome. All right. Well, this has been such an enlightening, fantastic conversation. I love bringing these topics together. I don't know that they're not usually discussed in tandem, but there's so many similarities around how you approach donors and the topic, how we remove friction, how you elevate your own brand as an organization with a better understanding and better education around these things. So thanks to all of you for educating us. And I hope everyone had a great time listening. I know I learned a lot. Quickly before we leave, reminder to anyone that uses Ponds, please fill out our survey and let us know what you liked or didn't like about our webinars. We really try to make these helpful and informative, and we're trying to improve all the time. And we give you $50 in your account as a thank you for doing so. And if you're not on Pond yet, you can join today and still claim that $50. So go to joinpond.com and we'd love to see you there. Thank you everyone so much for joining. And we wrapped on time. I don't know that we've ever done this before. So
Thank you.